Hey, welcome to Real Talk Mormonism. Number 5. This is a live call-in show with conversations on StreamYard. We're live. We're crazy. Anything can happen. This is a wild show. So you can interact with me. I'm your humble host, D-Vase, and that is Talent on loan from Kolob. I run the Mormon News Roundup and the Mormon movie reviews, and you're welcome to join the StreamYard link to discuss all things Mormonism. If you see the link at the bottom of the description, you will definitely be able to join us. Whether you're interested in church history, theology, current events, this show is your platform just as long as it's LDS related. We welcome both critics and defenders of the faith to join the conversation. This is your time to shine on screen. Whether you don't know the first thing about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or you're currently serving on the Strengthening Church Members Committee at church headquarters in Salt Lake City, there are no dumb questions. Nothing is off limits. Ask me anything at all. Stump the Chump, no holds barred. Outsmart the know-it-all. There's no script, no rules, except for YouTube's terms of service. Simply click on the StreamYard link and you can participate in the show with your thoughts, questions, and insights on anything that is LDS related. Engage in lively discussions and explore diverse perspectives on Mormonism with a one-of-a-kind call-in show. I don't see anyone in the green room, so I'm going to do some preparations for the Mormon News Roundup, which we release live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let's queue up a couple of things that I'm looking at and I'm working on to get ready for my news show. Let's see what we got.
Me, David A. Bednar. I'm a really important person. Look, it's the founder of our church that married at least 34 women, many of whom were just young girls. Praise to the man. As you can see, I have many doodads from my travels all around the world, as well as who's its and what's its galore. Now I have a meeting with these two Spencer Cox lookalikes. My last meeting of the day is with Jesus Christ. JK. It's just with a bunch of old white guys.
Yeah, so Coach has the best takes there. He has a full video over there about David A. Bednar, which he just premiered just this evening. So that is pretty fun stuff. Once again, follow that link. If anyone wants to test the link out, make sure it is working. I'd appreciate that. Now, one of my favorite people out there is Generally Unquotable. This is a really good program out there, and she has great news updates. I just want to get prepared for our show on Sunday, and she also she does a really good job of giving you the Mormon news. So let's watch a couple of her takes here, and we'll react to them.
Here's your Mormon news update for July 18th, 2024. First off today, a post from an all-Mormon, all-women Facebook group that's quite chilling. It says, "Sacred and holy things are done quietly. From ministering to another's heart to making covenants, things of a divine nature are done without a spotlight or an audience. In a world where oversharing is a norm, sacredness is being stripped and forgotten. One example that has been on my mind the last month or two is the Martha Stewarts, the Pioneer Womans, and so forth. Any woman who, in the public eye or not, blogs, vlogs, and posts about cooking, home organizing, home decorating, cleaning, etc. for money is prostituting her spirit. She was given divine and sacred gifts to create and nurture a home and family. When she exploits those gifts through media for a profit, she is in a way mocking the gifts God gave her and putting money on the same level or above the sacredness of her gifts and talents. These women are often well-intentioned but desperate, hoping to be on the Lord's errand, but also make side money to keep their family afloat. They are not serving the Lord with their whole heart, might, mind, and strength, because there is a part of their heart more concerned with survival and money than being on the Lord's mission completely. Or they are selfishly concerned with their image, longing to shine a spotlight on all the holy and sacred things they do in their homes, but really are stripping the sacredness away as they exploit God-given gifts for the world to see. If our homes are like temples, and we wouldn't take a video camera into the temple or post about the temple online, we shouldn't do the same with our homes. Really listening to the Spirit and really serving Him by using our gifts to create and nurture temple-like homes will bring blessings. We will survive the world, pay the bills, and stay afloat if we keep sacred things sacred and quietly serve the Lord completely.
I do wonder what business is it of hers, of what people are doing, supposed motivations for money. Well, some people, they need to put food on the table. They need to be able to pay their bills. If they're able to make some decent content and bring in a little bit of extra income, what's it to you? I see absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. It's a totally bizarre argument in my mind.
Completely. I do think this dear sister is forgetting all of the books that prophets have written and made money off of. It's also really sad that the church has been so successful in their job of silencing women that they don't even have to do it anymore. They can just sit back and allow the women to silence each other.
That's a good point. Up until it was about 20 years ago, I believe, when the general authorities stopped supposedly getting the dividends from the books that they wrote. But back in times past, it used to be that the general authorities made a lot of money from the royalties of the books that they put in Deseret Book. Now, I've been told that hasn't happened anymore, but I don't know that for certainty because church finances are not transparent. Yeah, but there's a lot of irony here.
As the days go by, and I've been out of the church for 5 years now, I often think of how lucky I am that the church isn't here to ruin them for me. Next up, the Hawaii.
Yeah, just like Doug Vincent said here, the leaders of the church who are women, they're called general officers. Excuse me, they're called general officers of the church, not general authorities of the church. They don't even get a stipend. Hey, Colch, I see that you're coming on here. How's it going, buddy?
It's going good, man. How are you?
Hey, it's going pretty good. That was a fun episode with David Bednar there.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So you combined some of your old. You had some of that was like previously used. What's the deal there?
Yeah, I was trying to repurpose old material. So I had made. I think people remember when Elder Bednar put out his. I don't think he called it Day in the Life, but he essentially was like, "Come watch me at church headquarters for a whole day," and I think he got a positive reaction from it. So he did another one when he went out to a state conference. And I thought it was hilarious, and I had dialogue running in my head when I watched it. So I was like, I should record this, and I won't even try to do a Bednar impression. I'll just sound like me. and it blew up. I think today it's that first one is probably like my second most popular TikTok I've ever done. So I was like, I put those on my channel when I first started, so hardly anyone has seen them on YouTube. And so I thought, how can I take those and add some new stuff? So you saw I kind of made like a beginning, threw one in, a middle, threw another one in, and then had an ending. So a little bit of mix of old and new. And I thought it worked out pretty well.
No, I thought it was great. It was hilarious. First of all, David Bednar is one of the most active people on social media. He's held 2 different, to my knowledge, or maybe even 3 live stream Q&As on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe that those questions are highly correlated, but at least that's better than nothing. Yeah. He is much more public about his persona than any other apostle really ever has been. And that is why, in my opinion, he is my favorite apostle. Not because I like his personality or I think that he's incredibly handsome, which is true. I do think that he's handsome. I'm definitely jealous there. But it's because he's much more transparent. He did the question and answer session at the National Press Club briefing 2 years ago in Washington, D.C. That's unprecedented. You will not get that from anybody else. That's why he's my favorite. But speaking to what you said, this is David A. Bednar's actual Facebook page. All of the apostles they have an Instagram, they have a Facebook page, and they have a Twitter. There's no TikTok. But yeah, he posted this and he titled it himself "A Day in the Life of." So yeah, I mean that's what he originally called it, and of course you did a voiceover on it, right?
Yeah. I just took out all his audio and added some goofy music, and then put my own commentary.
Yeah, really, really good stuff there for sure.
Thanks, man.
And how's your channel going here? You only launched it 2 months ago. You're almost 2,000 subscribers in just a short period of time here. What's going well on what's going well on your channel for you? What are people really liking the most?
People really have enjoyed the recent Jacob Hansen content that I put out. You can see Jacob is confused, and then there's Dan resigns. Jacob wants that ad. Get that ad. I'm monetized now. Watch that ad. Watch that ad.
Yeah, so they're liking your Jacob Hansen videos, the apologists, your reactions here. Where will you go stuff? They enjoy that.
Yeah, and when I first started, I did a lot of parody songs, and since I was doing them on TikTok, I had to keep them to about a minute in length. So when I'm doing new ones, I'm trying to do full length, but I think I'm really getting into trying to do longer form content, and I think people like that, but it's hard to know like what exactly people enjoy. I'm kind of Marie variety show. I'm all over the place, so I'm trying to figure out what the audience really enjoys, and I'm gonna try to do more of that and probably less of the other stuff.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. Now, you're supposed to appear on the Roundup here this Sunday. And I know this live stream might not be the most exciting for people. I understand that if nobody's calling in, but we will cover. Let's just discuss real quick what we are going to cover on Sunday to just make sure we're on the same sheet of music here.
We were going to do this anyway. You might as well do it for everyone to see. Show how the sausage is made.
Yeah, well, we believe in transparency for sure, absolutely. And you believe in so much transparency that you've got yourself doxxed and your address out there. Now that's transparency.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it, but I have been doxxed and my address put out. So yeah,
absolutely. Now, so every week, Richie Stedman, who has the other Cultural Hall. Do you ever get mixed up for Richie Stedman and the Cultural Hall podcast? By the way,
Jacob Hansen has the same issue with, because wasn't there a thoughtful faith, and then he
Right.
took thoughtful, and he says he didn't know about it. I legit didn't know there was a cultural hall. When I started my anonymous Exmo account on Twitter, I just went with like, what's a good kind of church sounding name? And I was like, well, my favorite place in a LDS church building is the cultural hall. You got church basketball. That's where all the fun activities were, the stake dances. So that's what I went with. And then I realized there was a faithful podcast. Oh, thank you, Catherine. There's a faithful podcast called The Cultural Hall. And I actually had I know you've had a run-in. I wouldn't say a run-in. You've had Richie on your program, right?
I
From the
did have
Cultural Hall?
episode 63, as memory serves. I did have Richie Stedman on the Mormon News Roundup. I'm going to release an episode, long lost episode about that coming up here, which you definitely helped me edit. But, if you look over there at the Cultural Hall, this is one of the longest running. This isn't your
Yeah.
Cultural Hall. This is a different
No,
Cultural Hall.
that's the faithful, that's the good one. I'm like the devil Cultural Hall. This is the angel Cultural Hall.
But I just want to compare. I don't mind throwing some shade around here, because if you look at how many subscribers, they've got 800 episodes here, Culch, and he has 500 subscribers. You've only been around for a couple of weeks, and you're at almost 2,000. Not too shabby.
Not too bad, not too bad. But yet, I've had a bit of interaction with Richie from Cultural Hall. They're on Twitter and they're fairly active, so I've chatted with them, and it's always been pleasant. It's been good. And he asked one time just in a tweet, like, hey, any chance I can get your TikTok name? Because I had the Cultural Hall, they hadn't gotten it. So when I started on TikTok, that's what I had. And I think I've told this story before, so if you've heard it, feel free to tune out. But anyway, I just told him, like, I wasn't doing much on TikTok at the time, so I just gave it to him. I snagged Cultural Hall, so I had that, and I just restarted my channel, and I gave them the Cultural Hall handle, and he threw me a couple bucks. I didn't ask for it. He did it to be nice, which was cool. And they haven't done a single thing with it. I think they just wanted to get rid of it from the anti. So
wow, so you gave him up your handle. Just
I didn't have to. I chose to. I did it willingly. There was informed consent. Yes.
Wow, and he threw you a couple of bucks, but then they haven't done anything with it. That's interesting.
No, so it makes me because I thought that they maybe wanted to go the TikTok route, because that would probably be a good way to advertise their channel and to get views. But as far as I know, I think whatever I left on the channel, maybe like a video or two, is probably still there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's take we always share with the co-hosts here a shared document where we dump in random ideas here about what could happen in the week. So let's nail down the items here. I know people watching the sausage. There's not that many people out here, but what can I tell you? Okay, phone lines are open. If you want to talk anything Mormonism, you can follow up with Culch. Be happy to have you on here. Here's some of the things that caught my attention, and we can certainly trim these down. Or if there's something that I missed, just let me know. This is just a collaboration. So,
sure.
Post Malone, Book of Mormon at the Utah airport. Did you see that one?
I saw someone post about that, so I haven't dove too far into it, but that's noteworthy.
Yeah, let's keep that. Now, I thought it was interesting here. The members of Congress, there's been a lot of stuff here. Members of Congress toured Welfare Square, and only Elder Cook of the presidency of the 70s showed them around. They couldn't even get an apostle out for these guys. I thought that was kind of interesting.
They got Elder Cook doing the rounds. Wasn't he the only one who met with Zelensky?
No, this is Elder Carl B. Cook of the presidency.
Oh, okay.
Different from
not an
Quentin.
apostle. Gotcha.
Yeah, different from Quentin Cook. But yeah, eight congressmen, you couldn't even pull out an apostle, or at least presiding. You got a random 70 up here. I do see Doug. I see that you're in the green room. We'll get you in after we're done.
Oh, Doug's here too. Cool.
Yeah, we'll get you in. We'll get you in. Actually, we'll add you to the stage right now. Doug, how's it going, Doug?
Good.
Yo, Doug.
I'm gonna mute you for right now. You're on the show. We'll get you on after we're done with Culture. It's gonna be 5-10 minutes. Okay.
Oh, no problem.
All right, I got you muted for a minute here. Okay, so now we have an innate desire to serve others here. What about this Desnat article here? I don't know. I mean,
dude, I have a thing for Desnat. Like, I have a love-hate relationship, so this would be something I'd want to talk about.
Okay, you want to talk about that? That's good. Well, I haven't really read it myself. Gordon Monson puts out a column that says what I think a lot of people think. Gordon Monson, I worry that boredom at church as much as anything else scares away Latter-day Saints. That seems true. What do you want to keep that or punt that one?
Yeah, let's keep it. I like
Okay.
Gordon's stuff, and I like that
I
he
do.
tweaks all the wrong people on Twitter.
Yeah. You know what? For a guy who was a sports reporter who didn't know that much about religion, he comes across with just take after take that is really, really good, honestly.
Yeah.
I actually put together a video here that I sent this video to Gordon Monson.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, I did. He didn't respond back, but actually, you know what? We got a minute here. Gordon
Sure.
Monson.
Doug's happy to watch it.
Yeah, hold on.
And if he doesn't want to, he can't tell us because he's muted.
Yeah. So Gordon Monson put together a column a little while ago. This is like a 4-minute video. It was 20 ways to slightly improve the LDS church. I actually made a video of it and I sent it to Gordon, but he didn't respond back here. But let me just play that just for fun here. I really like this video. I made it the most epic and grandiose that I possibly could. So we'll see how I do.
Oh, we get to watch ads too. Cool.
Yeah, well, I got to get myself premium subscription here, Here we go.
Why is change often perceived as a threat rather than an opportunity, especially within religious institutions? This question resonates through time and space, echoing within the hallowed halls of every religious establishment. The reasons behind this resistance to change are as varied as they are complex.
I love the music.
It's a matter of upholding traditions, preserving the sanctity of the faith, and maintaining a sense of stability and continuity. For others, it's about fear of the unknown, a reluctance to challenge established norms, or a perceived threat to their identity and beliefs. This resistance can become a force field, an invisible barrier that shields the institution from the winds of change. Yet every so often, a voice rises above the chorus, daring to challenge the status quo and calling for change. One such voice within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is that of Gordon Monson.
There he is.
A member of the LDS Church, Monson has sparked a conversation by proposing a series of changes aimed at improving the church and its practices. His bold vision has stirred the pot, prompting both support and criticism within the church. Now let's delve into a specific case, the changes proposed by LDS Church member Gordon Monson. Gordon Monson, a columnist for the Salt Lake Tribune, has suggested a list of 20 changes to improve the LDS Church. Among his key proposals, Monson calls for an alteration of the missionary program. He believes this will not only refresh the traditional methods, but also bring about a more engaging and effective approach to spreading the church's message. Monson also advocates for an improved treatment of women within the LDS Church. He envisions a church where women are equally represented, respected, and valued, a step that would undeniably foster a more balanced and harmonious faith community. Moreover, he pushes for the promotion of a more accepting and less judgmental culture within the church. In his view, love and acceptance should be at the heart of the LDS Church, reflecting the core teachings of the faith. Monson's more controversial suggestions include making adherence to the word of wisdom optional. This would allow members to exercise their personal discretion and judgment on matters of health and diet, and could potentially attract those who may feel constrained by the current guidelines. He also proposes a reduction in the tithing requirement, a move that could ease the financial burden on members, making the church more accessible to those of all economic backgrounds. Furthermore, he suggests a revision of the doctrine of eternal kingdoms of glory. This would entail a significant reinterpretation of LDS scripture and a rethinking of deeply entrenched beliefs about the afterlife. Finally, Monson believes the LDS Church should issue apologies for past wrongs related to racism, sexism, and homophobia. This act of humility and contrition, he suggests, would demonstrate the Church's commitment to growth, learning, and improvement. These proposals, while potentially beneficial, would necessitate significant shifts in LDS doctrine and practices. Monson's proposed changes are undeniably bold and thought-provoking. He proposes a deep dive into the fundamentals of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, challenging norms and practices that have been in place for centuries. His wish list is comprehensive, touching on vital aspects of the church, such as the missionary program, treatment of women, and the overall culture within the church. Monson's proposals also delve into more sensitive areas, questioning adherence to the word of wisdom and the tithing requirement, suggesting a possible revision in the doctrine of eternal kingdoms of glory. These are substantial shifts that would necessitate a profound re-evaluation of LDS scripture. Moreover, he advocates for the church to acknowledge and apologize for past wrongs concerning racism, sexism, and homophobia, a step that could pave the way for healing and reconciliation. However, the LDS leadership's historical resistance to issuing apologies may make this a difficult proposition. Whether these changes will be embraced or resisted, only time will tell. But one thing is clear. Every religious institution, including the LDS Church, must continually examine its practices and beliefs in the light of progress in humanity.
What can we do to fix it?
Okay, I like that picture. I definitely like that picture at the end of it where it has like him with the spotlight. I'll get you in a second, Doug. Well, first, Coach, what do you think of the video? And then what do you think of what Monson said about the improvements for the church?
But it was good, man. Yeah, those are all. A lot of it is pretty common sense. There were a lot of them, so I don't remember all, but I was nodding my head with a lot of them, and I think it would improve church. But unfortunately, the church is run by gerontocracy, and I think they're just kind of cool with the status quo and not looking to change much.
Yeah, let me ask you, Doug. Let me get you in on this, Doug. What do you think of the video, and what do you think of Gordon Monson's suggestions for improvements to the church?
I think they're common sense. I think a lot of people feel that way. I think that the church is very resistant to that kind of thing. So I don't hold out a lot of hope, but you never know.
Solid suggestions in my humble estimation, to be sure. Now, getting back to that shared document here. So we got the Gordon Monson boredom at church. Then we also have the church. I always find this amusing here. By the numbers, humanitarian aid around the world. By the numbers. What do you mean by the numbers? Yeah, we're going to see a whole lot of numbers through here. Worldwide aid of 64 mobility projects and 53. There's lots of numbers in here. Do we have any way to confirm any of these so-called numbers? And is there any way for anyone outside of church headquarters to confirm this 112 clean water projects? Is that confirmable in any way?
Not unless they confirm it, and then you don't even know. It should be called by our numbers.
Exactly.
And I don't want to discount any good the church is doing, because they do. You got to think that some of that is legit, and they are doing good, but they're known to kind of fudge with the numbers and count things that may not, like service to their own members and some of those numbers. So I don't know. It's hard to say.
It's hard to put any trust and confidence in between something that is not externally audited from an organization that has a history of having faith-promoting narratives and hiding things that have a negative light in the church, plus the fact that the church was fined for not fully disclosing like they were supposed to. Now you're asking me to trust an organization with that kind of a track record? That's a tough sell. What do you think there, Doug?
Well, I personally know somebody who is doing some of those water projects, and he's doing a desalination on some of the Pacific Islands, the little tiny ones that fresh water is really hard to come by. So, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I wouldn't question that, to be quite honest. I don't think they're fudging that. They might fudge other things like counting fast offerings as humanitarian aid, that kind of thing. So, but they're not gonna. I don't think they're doing that. So,
what you said, Doug, is probably correct. The church is probably doing a lot of good and is helping a lot of people, and these numbers are probably mostly accurate. But that's the problem. When there's no transparency, you're asking me to believe a claim without evidence. If the church was externally audited and had real humanitarian report by things that could be confirmed, then we could give the church its full due credit for all the good that it's doing. Instead, there's always a gray area of like, well, we don't know that for certain. You're making a claim with no evidence. It's difficult for me as a rational skeptic to believe things without a good reason. And I don't have a great reason to believe these claims. So, hey, going back to our articles for Sunday here, Culch, by the way, Mormon News Update here, generally unquotable. She had a very good update, which I want. This update here, I want to have you react to it, because guess what? It's going to talk a lot about the Philippines.
Okay.
You're very familiar with that, right?
I've been there. Yeah.
Yep, she's going to talk about what the church is doing in the Philippines. It's very interesting stuff. We're not going to go over it right now. And also what the church has or has not been done during Hurricane Beryl. Now, Megan, who runs the Generally Unquotable channel, who is coming on the Mormon News Roundup coming up shortly, she was in Hurricane Beryl's flight path, or, she's in Texas.
Yeah, she lives in Texas.
Right. She didn't have power for like 5 days. So she didn't release any content. And what she's going to talk about during this is the fact that the church, according to her, and we're going to react to this, dropped the ball significantly. So that's very interesting. We also have Annette Dennis is back. Did you hear about that one?
No, Sister Dennis is back.
She is back. If you click on this, this was just preparation. Guess who the commencement speaker is going to be for BYU Idaho?
There you go, Sister Dennis.
Sister Dennis. You know, the same thing happened with Brad Wilcox. Remember, he had all the controversial statements. He had all the faux pas at the Tri-State Fireside, and then they threw a dog a bone and had him do the BYU commencement in Idaho. Well, Sister Annette Dennis has probably stepped in it more than anybody else has in the last few months, and now they're throwing her a softball. So yeah, that's very interesting. We'll see if she doubles down on the women empowerment issue here. We got a couple of temple updates here. Las Vegas City Council has done some voting. And then, as you mentioned, President Zelensky, we covered this a little bit in the last roundup. He came all the way to church headquarters because the governor's convention was in Salt Lake City. And he came to church headquarters of President Zelensky, and he didn't meet with the First Presidency. They were AWOL. They didn't show up. He did meet with Elder Cook, apparently, but that's about it. Came all the way. When you meet with an apostle of God and learn how his church has aided your people. The church has allegedly engaged in some help in Ukraine, but once again, it's kind of murky as to the exact figures, the exact amount, how many hours are we talking about? And they didn't have the First Presidency meet with him, even though he was sitting inside church headquarters. No First Presidency. They didn't come. They didn't show up. Find that to be very interesting myself.
You think that has to do with them wanting to be politically neutral? And even the statements they've made about the war middle.
Yep. Because the church is obsessed with its tax-exempt status. And again, in the United States, at least, you could lose your tax-exempt status if a nonprofit organization endorses a political candidate or endorses a political platform. You can lose your tax-exempt status. Well, he's seen as too political. So instead of meeting with somebody who's in abject human suffering and is the nexus for someone who really needs help, instead, the First Presidency doesn't want to come out because they're completely neutral. Hey, what do you think about all that, Doug?
I think that's probably the right strategy. You know, they can't get in the middle of too many things, at least not at this point. Now, if it escalated, then they may have to take a stand. So, yeah, they didn't do that. They didn't do that in World War II. They sat out the whole thing. So.
Now, can you clarify? What do you mean by that, Doug? Fill us in on that real quick.
Well, in World War II, the church basically they allowed some of the Nazi leaders to meet with church leaders. Our leaders went over there and met with some of their top brass, and they also helped in the genealogy program in Germany, where they were trying to map out people's genealogies to see if they had any Jewish blood in them. So, so the church kind of cooperated to some extent, not like super deep collaboration, but they just floated by. Other religions took more of a stand, like Jehovah's Witnesses and others, and they were persecuted by the Nazis, and a lot of their members wound up being killed. But the church kind of came away unscathed from that. There's a really good book about that, by the way. I can't remember the title, but I read it, and it's kind of revealing. So.
Yeah, I mean, the church seems to have gotten more and more politically neutral. In fact, they revised their political neutrality statement here just about, 6 months ago, where they said, we're really, 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 really neutral, and we don't want to take sides on anything. We're not going to condemn anything. We're not going to call out Putin. We're not going to meet with Zelensky. We're not going to do anything that I would expect that a person who's supposed to be the sole arbiter of morality would then call evil out, call a spade, but the church does not want to do that. Now, a couple of the other articles here. First of all, we have the President Trump's assassination attempt. And what I noticed here from the world leaders who are sharing messages is that the church didn't make a statement on this one either. So all of these world leaders across the world, I mean, everyone sent in messages here, even other faith leaders, everyone from Zelensky to the Pope to Macron to Justin Trudeau to all these other world faith leaders, they all made statements about, that there's no place for violence in our society. They condemned the actions of the shooter and that they wish our nation the very best. And the church did not release a statement on this. Now, the church did release a statement for the initial invasion of Ukraine. They said our thoughts and our prayers are with it. When, this latest in Gaza, when Israel went into Gaza after the horrible events of last October, they issued another statement. So the church has issued statements in the past on this, but they did not issue a statement at all about Donald Trump. Why didn't they? And how do you feel about that? What do you think, Coach?
I don't know. I mean, I understand just because the type of organization they are, why they would want to be neutral, and some of the pros and cons of that. I think they probably are thinking about their missionary work and the church in Russia and a temple that's been announced but has never been built. So it's kind of try to play both sides.
Yeah, I think I've got you might have a little bit of a connection problem there. Doug, what do you think? The church is not getting involved once again. They don't get involved with Ukraine. They're not getting involved with the Trump assassination. They just seem to be all hands off all the time, unless it's LGBTQ issues, and then it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, there's certain push button issues that they consider moral issues, and I think they're just trying to stay out of the rest of it. I think they've kind of been burned a little bit. Prop 8 burned them. Even the Nazi issue has burned them. It's like been made into a book. I think there's also a play about it. So I think they've maybe dialed it back a little bit, and they're just content to be a church and stay out of the rest of it, unless it's their hot button issues like gay rights or women and the priesthood and things like that. So
you can kind of think back to the issues that the church has gotten involved in, and the church has really gotten a lot of it wrong in retrospect. The church fought against the Equal Rights Amendment back in, what was that, 1974? The church fought against the Civil Rights Act in 1964, 1965. The church has come out against when Roe versus Wade was overthrown. They came out against that. It seems like every social issue, whether it's racism and the priesthood ban of 1978 or anything else, that whenever the church gets involved with these things, as you pointed out in World War II, even cozying up to Nazis, where Heber J. Grand is taking pictures with a Nazi in the Nazi flag in the background, and with senior leaders of the SS at a table at a luncheon of some sort. They got burned in Proposition 8. They've even gotten burned recently in some of the other things that they've gotten involved with. And they said, you know what? We tried to come down on the wrong side of history. I think we're just going to set this one out. I think that's what we're seeing as a pattern. At least that's what I see.
Agreed.
Now, yeah. So as far as a couple of the joke of the week here, now I got to get your opinion on this, Coach. What do you think here? I pulled up the most ridiculous memes from, and I found a lot of them. I did the Mormon joke.
Boy, I know this one.
No!
Oh my gosh!
The Trump and Sam. Oh man, it's not pulling up here. Trump and Samuel the Lamanite. For some reason, it was on a private posting here. Oh man, it's not pulling up here. I guess this is why we're checking this stuff here. It's not pulling up here. Content is not available right now. I think I'm logged in under the wrong account. Are you good with covering some of these ridiculous Trump memes, culture? Is that too hot of a topic?
No, that's fine. I think as long as you kind of keep it light,
Yeah,
a little bit of time has passed. It's not as raw as it was. And as long as we're not poking too much fun or being insensitive, I think it's okay.
One of the biggest ones that was a surprise to me was Dan McClellan weighed in right afterwards. And, a famous Mormon scholar. And he says this: the most likely cause of Trump's injury was some kind of shrapnel like glass from a teleprompter. There's simply no possible way the bullet shown by Trump's head in the astonishing photo struck the top of his right ear or left so much intact. So here we have our famous Mormon Bible scholar who's weighing in on the ballistics of it and says, no, he wasn't hit by a bullet. It was just shrapnel from the glass. How do you feel about Dan McClellan weighing in on this one?
Get wade into these political things, and you could say that's
we got kind of a bad connection with you a little bit. Can you say that one more time?
Dan sometimes will wade into political discussions, and and usually he does a pretty good job. I just think with this one, with just being the topic it was and a potential candidate for presidency almost dying,
It doesn't seem
maybe
to
not
me that
tweeted.
Dan has any particular expertise in ballistics and that type of thing. So
Right.
it erodes his credibility, honestly. I mean, you're supposed to be the scholar of the Bible and religion, and your takes are supposed to be solid. And then when you come out with a take that doesn't seem to be connected to anything, and you really don't have the evidence, and it seems extremely speculative, it calls everything else that you're doing into question. I think Dan really messed up. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, don't weigh in on things you don't know a lot about.
Yeah,
Makes you look
exactly.
dumb. Yeah.
It certainly does. And that's why actually he got called out by so many people here. He said, I appreciate being called out. And he essentially retracted it and said, well, this is just my non-expert opinion on seem to be, and I apologize. I'll do better in the future. They handed it to him and he retracted what he was doing there. So
to his credit, he will apologize when he's, when he realizes he's stepped in it. And a lot of people won't. They'll double down or they'll just ignore. So, that's good that he does that. Yeah, it's definitely good that he does that. And actually, in my last ridiculous call-in show here, Real Talk Mormonism 003, I actually got a caller who came in and called in and said that it was Mormons who did the assassination. Yeah, you got that right. Let me just play Dr. Spider telling us that it was actually Mormons. I saw this live. It was bizarre.
Yeah, it was Mormons who tried to assassinate Trump. Let's, Doug, I don't know if you've seen this, but you can rate how well I responded. Okay, well, you can tell me how well did I respond to this caller saying that it was Mormons who assassinated Trump. Sorry.
And so that's why I was calling you.
That's what they're going to tell you. That's for sure. Jesus is not enough. According to church teachings, you got to have more.
So that's why I was calling you. And I was like, what do I do about this? So should I shoot him or?
Absolutely not. No, you should be very kind to the missionaries. Even if you disagree with them, you absolutely should not shoot them. I was a missionary and a couple of people pulled guns on me, which I did not appreciate. We should take very good care of the missionaries, even if you have strong disagreements with them.
What if they hate Trump?
Well,
Can I shoot him?
That's no excuse for any violence on anybody, whether their beliefs, there's no call for violence against somebody because of their theological beliefs. That's harmful.
Well, why are they trying to shoot Trump and shit?
Okay, hold on. We'll finish this one off.
Because they should not be doing that. Because that's my buddy, and I got my Trump hat in the mail.
I see absolutely no evidence that Mormon missionaries were involved with the Trump assassination whatsoever. That's a claim that I have not seen any valid reporting on. The person who did try to assassinate Trump was not a Latter-day Saint, to my knowledge. Well, okay, Doug, how do you rate my response to this caller? Did I do a good job defending the church?
You were rock solid, man. You held back just perfectly, but you didn't launch into the you're batshit crazy tirade, So
we keep watching to the end of that conversation because it gets worse from there. This Real Talk Mormonism call-in show is off the hook. There's a lot of crazy stuff going around. There's no doubt about it. So. Before we let you all go there, I wanted to prep a little bit myself for the Sunday show, and the best way to do that, in my opinion, is watching a couple of the generally unquotable videos, because I really do think her stuff is very, very good. So I just wanted to watch a couple of those, and you guys can give us your reactions on that to prepare for our Sunday show here. She wasn't able to release any content while she was literally being battered by a hurricane and had no power, but she's back up here. So let's pull up the last couple of these and get her thoughts on them. It's very good stuff here.
Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for July 16th, 2024. Now, when I was Mormon, there were a lot of things that I did not know about the church and its dealings, especially its financial dealings. Here's one of them. From a great article in LGBTQ Nation, it says, in 2008, California voters outlawed same-sex marriage by passing Proposition 8, an infamous ballot measure largely funded by the Mormon Church. I knew the church's stance on same-sex marriage. I did not, however, know that it was funding ballot measures. At the time, I was faithfully giving my 10% while trying to provide for 3 small children, and the church was outspending, according to the film The Mormon Proposition, an estimated $22 million for the cause to make sure Prop 8 passed and gay couples could not marry. Back to the article, the good news is my tithing dollars were hopefully wasted because in California, voters just learned what ballot initiatives they'll be voting on this November, and among them is Proposition 3, a law that would enshrine the right to same-sex marriage in the state constitution of California, effectively undoing Proposition 8. The measure will ask voters to approve a fundamental right to marry and remove language that defines marriage as solely between a man and a woman. The history of marriage equality in California is a veritable roller coaster ride, starting in 2004 when then Mayor of San Francisco Gavin Newsom directed city officials to start issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Newsom said the California Constitution's Equal Protection Clause gave him the authority to do so. Both Newsom and the San Francisco District Attorney at the time, Kamala Harris, were among those who officiated approximately 4,000 same-sex marriages in the city from February 12th to March 11th before the state Supreme Court overturned Newsom's directive. Lawsuits followed, and the court reversed itself in 2008, legalizing marriage equality in California, the second state to do so after Massachusetts in 2003. The reprieve wouldn't last long. 2 weeks before the state court's decision, opponents of same-sex marriage funded with $20 million from the Mormon Church managed to get the constitutional amendment on the general election ballot, plainly titled "Eliminates Right of Same-Sex Couples to Marry Act." Remarkably, on the same night Barack Obama was swept into office as the first Black American president, California voters outlawed same-sex unions with 52% of the vote. Marriage equality advocates were gobsmacked. But 5 years later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled California's ban as unconstitutional. That same year, the High Court struck down the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, which forbade the federal government from recognizing same-sex marriages. By 2015, marriage equality was the law of the land, with the U.S. Supreme Court's landmark Obergefell versus Hodges decision. But nearly 16 years after the passage of Proposition 8 shocked the state and the nation, the discriminatory Zombie Act outlawing same-sex marriage remains in the California Constitution. Prop 3, authored by State Assembly member Evan Lowe, Democrat of Silicon Valley, and State Senator Scott Wayner, Democrat from San Francisco, will take out the trash. Lowe, who's running for a seat in Congress this fall, told LGBTQ Nation in an interview earlier this year that repealing the act is a moral obligation as well as a practical concern. Following the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision repeal, Justice Clarence Thomas has made clear other personal rights are in the conservative court's crosshairs, making it all the more important to legally protect same-sex marriage rights. It's in direct response to Roe v. Wade being overturned because the Supreme Court said after Roe that marriage equality would be next, said Lowe. If they show you who they are, we need to believe that. And that's actually something that I learned in therapy that I like to take with me in life. When people show me who they are, I really try to believe them. Next up.
Okay, let's ruminate on that just a little bit. That's pretty complicated stuff, but I just want to clarify that the $20 million, those were from church members, not from the church itself. Now, it turned out that the church donated approximately $200,000 to Proposition 8. Those were gifts in kind from services and transportation and things like that, but it wasn't church members themselves. But of course, in hindsight, that entire endeavor really was a massive waste of time and resources because we have the Supreme Court, giving us the law of the land, and we also have Proposition 3 now in California as well. What are your thoughts on this one here, Coach? What do you think?
It sounds like Prop 3 is needed. The thing we saw when Roe v. Wade happened, basically all these states who had abortion in their outlawed in their constitution, that kicked back in. We're talking laws from the 1800s. So if they don't go ahead and do this, if down the road, some of the Supreme Court justices have said they would like to see Obergefell reversed, then if you've still got that as part of your constitution, California reverts back to it. So it seems like a smart move.
Yeah, we want to see these zombie laws that came about from Roe versus Wade. Some of those were laws that were passed over 100 years ago, and they were incredibly regressive. So looks like California is trying to get ahead of things. And once again, we were talking about the culture wars here, Doug. It looks like the church has once again picked the wrong side because it looks like not only is it going to be at the federal level, but this is going to pass through at the state level in California. I can almost assure you, especially with the generational shift that we have in people's acceptance of gay marriage, even within the church, up to 60% of people in the church approve of same-sex unions anyway. So what do you think about this one, Doug?
Yeah, I really liked her take out the trash comment. I thought that was perfect. Yeah, you've got to clean this stuff up because it does come back to bite you. We've seen that now several times. So.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to admit that back in 2008, I remember it was after I graduated from BYU, but I was still friends with one of my BYU professors on Facebook, and he seemed to be posting things that could have been considered woke at the time. And I challenged him on the Proposition 8, and I said, do you, and I put this in the public sphere, I said, do you support Proposition 8? Yes or no? I need a good answer on this. And he dodged the question. He wouldn't answer the question. And I came to find out later that I thought that he was woke. And in fact, he's super conservative. So it's, you can never read the tea leaves. But I was trying to shame him and said, if your bishop asked you to go down there or donate to you, would you do it? And his response back to me was, my bishop knows me well enough to never ask me that question. So I thought he was a big leftist, but it turns out he was a conservative all along. So anyway, that's just a little story about Prop 8 from my perspective. A couple more articles.
Hey, D-Base.
Oh, yeah.
D-Base,
Go ahead.
Just one other little tidbit that I think is kind of a delicious irony is that the case that really broke the marriage equality thing wide open nationally happened in Utah.
Can you
So
explain that? What do you mean by that?
yeah. So some of the Utah laws were struck down first by the um, federal courts, and that kind of opened up the whole national referendum for getting the marriage equality passed. So
I
I
gotcha.
forgot all the name. I forgot all the names involved, but I just always thought that was kind of ironic that um, it had been struck down in Utah, that got challenged by a gay couple in Salt Lake City. That went to the federal courts. They made a big argument for it. That argument later was the one that went before the Supreme Court and kind of broke it. So
I gotcha. Okay, I
yeah.
wasn't aware of that. Very good stuff. Let's keep on going.
Yep.
Let's keep on going.
While reading an article about temples, I found some entertaining commentary from LDS Living about who writes the dedicatory prayers for temples. In his April 2024 General Conference talk, Words Matter, Elder Ronald A. Rasband spoke of his assignment to dedicate the Bangkok, Thailand temple. He gave this insight into his process of writing the dedicatory prayer. I had prepared the dedicatory prayer months earlier. Those sacred words had been translated into 12 languages. We were ready, or so I thought. The night before the dedication, I was awakened from my sleep with an unsettled, urgent feeling about the dedicatory prayer. I tried to set aside the prompting, thinking the prayer was in place, but the Spirit would not leave me alone. I sensed certain words were missing, and by divine design they came to me in revelation, and I inserted these words in the prayer near the end. May we think celestial, letting thy Spirit prevail in our lives, and strive to be peacemakers always. The Lord was reminding me to heed the words of our living prophet. Think celestial, let the Spirit prevail, strive to be peacemakers. I found this rather ridiculous considering the current temple building climate. The Mormon Church is currently buying land in rural areas and attempting to build temples there that are, according to the people in the surrounding neighborhoods, destroying the rural feel of the neighborhoods. Non-member residents are then getting into heated battles with members, and it's pitting neighbors against each other. The church is being anything but a peacemaker when it comes to temple building. So, Mr. Rasband, it's really strange that the Lord inspired you to use part of a temple dedicatory prayer to highlight being peacemakers when you don't seem to know how to follow that advice. And last up to date.
Okay, like I said, she usually gives 3 takes. Now, I also find one other thing interesting about that comment, and that's the fact that we have supposed inspiration that always happens before, and then it's reported after. We can never get from any of the prophets, seers, and revelators who lead the church something specific and prophesiable that is going to take place in the future. What we always get is anecdotes that happened in the past looking back, so they can never be challenged or never confirmed. What do you think about what Megan said there, First Gulch?
I heard the think celestial thing, and I just thought it was an homage to President Nelson and his think celestial. That's all I could think about it. I mean, let me get it in that prayer.
Yeah, you got to put the think celestial in everywhere that you go. And if you forget the think celestial, it's always good to keep sweet, pray, and obey. What do you think about, Doug? What do you think about the peacemakers in a temple dedicatory prayer when we've seen so much non-peaceful things with temples lately?
Yeah, I have to agree with Coach. I think that's kind of trite. I think that the whole think celestial thing is sort of a weak attempt to be catchy,
Yeah.
And I don't think that it really comes across that way, at least not to me.
Now, what I do, whenever I'm engaging with people in the YouTube comments section, and I usually, some people, and I get into serious disagreements with them in YouTube, I usually give my somewhat critical take. And then at the end, I always put think celestial as my sign off. And that usually gets people going, because then they're like, that's not how you think celestial. And that was like, well, how do you do it then? Nobody's ever explained it to me. What? I don't understand. How do you do it then? All think celestial means is never criticize the brethren and drink the Kool-Aid. I mean, it's really it's almost like a cult-like thought-stopping technique, to be honest with you. Okay, one more take here from Megan here on this episode here.
If you hadn't heard yet, a hurricane hit Texas last Monday. I personally live outside of Houston, Texas, and our area was hit very hard. I have friends with trees in their houses and cars that were destroyed. My family and I went without cell service for 3 days, and because nobody has landlines, we couldn't use those either, so we had to drive around the neighborhood to find our friends and make sure that they were okay. We went without power for 6 days, and we went without Wi-Fi for 7 days. Temperatures hovered around 100 degrees, the humidity was very high, and millions of people in the Houston area were without air conditioning for that amount of time. There are actually some people who still do not have power. So how did the church in this area respond? Let's read the following letter from the Kingwood, Texas stake. We are mindful that much of our area is still without power due to the continuing power outage in the Kingwood Stake Center and Cleveland Chapel and inability to prepare those buildings for Sabbath services. There will be changes to the sacrament meeting schedules and locations this Sunday, July 14th, tomorrow. We also recognize that the power outages have made it difficult to take care of typical domestic tasks and chores at home. We understand that many may need to come as you are to sacrament meeting tomorrow, and that is just fine. All wards listed below will hold only sacrament meeting, no second hour meetings according to the schedule below. Oakhurst Building, 9 a.m. Oakhurst Ward, 10:30 a.m. San Jacinto River Ward, 12 p.m. Mills Branch Ward, 1:30 p.m. Cleveland Ward. Atascocita Building, 9 a.m. Kingwood First Ward, 10:30 a.m. Atascocita Ward, 12 p.m. Kingwood Second Ward. We are hopeful this scheduling adjustment will afford as many as possible the opportunity to partake of the sacrament and make sacred covenants with God. We recognize there are many who are suffering through challenges of all shapes and sizes right now. We love you. We are praying for you. We know the Lord is mindful of you and he is intimately familiar with the burdens that you carry. We hope and pray that you feel his love and care individually and specifically for you, in spite of the challenges swirling around. Kingwood Stake Presidency, Colby War, Kimball Staples, Jeff Green. So instead of opening powered, air-conditioned buildings for members to, I don't know, maybe sleep in or cook hot food in, they closed them down, shortened the meeting times, and prayed for their people. Meanwhile, other churches and community centers in the area that got power were open as cooling centers, giving away free water and ice. I actually took part in that process, and people were incredibly grateful to have cold, clean water and ice to cool some of their food so they didn't have to throw out everything in their fridge and freezer. Mormon Church, do better with your billions. And that's your update for today, folks. I am so happy to be back and see all of you again. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.
That's a heck of an update, isn't it? Doesn't she do the best takes ever?
I love do better with your billions. That's good.
Yeah,
That's really good.
That's good.
You know, it's just amazing. And she's going to come back where I don't know if we're going to watch the rest of them because she's going to talk more about what the church did. We'll talk about that in the episode on Sunday there, Culch. But the church really dropped the ball in Texas. What we see is the Mormon Helping Hands. And she actually does kind of a deep dive into what the Mormon Helping Hands, they don't call it Mormon Helping Hands anymore because you can't say the word Mormon. So they just call it Helping Hands, and about how the church didn't do anything in Texas. Again, we have an organization that's worth $265 billion, and other smaller faiths seem to be stepping up, but the church is not. Instead of providing cooling centers, the church really is concentrating on the sacrament instead of people's well-being. It's always like a supposed eternal perspective that there's something that's going to happen after you die, and we're going to take care of that. But meanwhile, what you need right now, it doesn't seem to be a high priority, right, Culch?
Yeah, the present day doesn't matter. It's what's going to happen in the afterlife, and anything that happens here is going to be worth it. Honestly, I in that email, they were saying, come to church, renew your covenants, take the sacrament. I think people were probably more excited to come and partake of an hour of air conditioning than they were of the bread and the water, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really, really hot here in where I am, Washington, D.C. It's been a record summer. We've had 3 straight days of over 100 degrees. I mean, there's a time for religious rituals for people. I know that people find connection with that. And there's a time to take care of people and their immediate needs now. And the church doesn't seem to be able to differentiate between the two. How do you feel about what Megan said there, Doug?
I think she's right on. The church has demonstrated many times recently that the legal liabilities
Church from beginning to
of opening up the building is more important to them than helping the people.
Yeah, that definitely is. Now, we probably, since I don't have a lot of callers, we probably only have time for one more. And I'm going to give you a user's choice here, guys. Either we can watch one more of the Generally Unquotable. Like I said, they're very, very good. And she gets more into what the church didn't do in Texas. Or we can watch one of my unreleased videos here, which I just put together here just a little while ago. It's the top 10 fails of, let me see here. Sorry, hold on. I want to make sure I got the right video here. The top 10 failings of President Nelson. So we can give you one or two. Either we can watch this video, which I haven't released yet, but I will soon, the top 10 fails of President Russell Nelson, or we can watch one more Generally Unquotable, which is yesterday's. We watched the day before yesterday's. We can watch either one of those two to close it out. What do you guys want to hear from? What do you want, Culch?
I would say whichever one's shorter, just because I have to pee. So
okay, all right. Well, then we'll leave it up to you, Doug. We can either do one more Generally Unquotable or my unreleased video.
Let's do Generally Unquotable, and then your video can be a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Culch. I mean, you can buzz off during this one, Culch, if you need to duck out for a minute.
Oh no, I'll watch it and then I'll hold it.
update.
I got good
Okay. Oh, well,
control.
okay. We don't want
Cross your legs. Cross your legs.
Okay. All right. Let's check it out.
July 17th, 2024. First off today from KSL News Radio, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced the groundbreaking date of the Cagayan de Oro Philippines temple recently.
Okay. Wait a minute. Real quick here. How close is that to your neck of the woods? The Philippines temple there, Culch?
That one is on Mindanao, which is the southern island of the Philippines. I was up by Manila, so I was in the north. This one's in the south.
How many temples are in the Philippines right now?
When I was there, it was just Manila. Then they built Cebu. They've announced a lot. I don't know how many are functioning now, maybe 3 or 4, but I think they have 3 or 4 more that are planned or under construction. So,
okay, got it.
And Filipino church members in Utah are celebrating. They said the temple groundbreaking announcement marks a significant moment of growth and access for church members in their home country. Aimeline Solis is a convert from Tarlac City. She's lived in Utah for over 30 years, but said she can relate to what this means to Filipinos. As these additional temples are being built, I feel it's a huge blessing for the members to be able to take part in the ordinances that are important to us, she said. There are more than 865,000 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Philippines. Church membership there is among the fastest growing in the world. So
okay, real quick, I'm gonna get back in here. 865,000 members of the church in the Philippines. Culch, when you were there, what percentage was the activity rate there?
30, if you were lucky.
Right, 30%.
30%, yeah.
Okay, 30%. Got it.
When I saw the 865,000 number and the projected amount of temples for the Philippines, which is 13, I got really curious about how many members per temple that is. And it averages out to be 67,000 members per temple in the Philippines once all 13 temples are completed. I then wondered if that's common to have that many members per temple. So I looked through the temples in the States and the US and found that the average amount of members per temple in the US.
Okay. Now, this is the big takeaway. I've already watched this one. Maybe you haven't, but you said in the Philippines, it was about 66,000 members per temple. And in the United States, I want to get some predictions here. Doug, do you think it's going to be more or less than 65,000 members per temple?
More.
You think it'll be more?
Yeah.
That's 66.
I'll say less.
Okay, less. Okay, well, we got the over and we got the under. Let's check it out.
US is roughly 55,000 members. The numbers go everywhere from North Dakota with roughly 12,000 members for their one temple to Georgia that has 91,000 members for their one temple. There didn't seem to be a huge correlation between the number of members and the amount of temples in any given state. Now, I know that people don't always geographically go to the temple in their state, so the numbers don't make sense that way necessarily. I just thought it was super interesting. Next up, more info.
So what do you think about that number? That's a breakdown that I'd never even really considered before. The total number of members per temple, you can just divide up the total members, and we're approximately in that range of, throughout the world, somewhere in the range of 50 to 60,000 members per temple. When you put it that way, it seems like the temples are, I don't know, that seems pretty decent. But then when we look at the data, they're not used very well. You would think 55,000 people for a temple would be used a lot, but it's just not.
Yeah, and you got to remember that of those, say 50, 60,000, how many of those are endowed members that are actually going to be attending the temple?
Yeah, that's a good point. What do you think, Doug?
Well, you got to subtract the children that are under the age of 12 because they're not going to be going.
Members.
The inactive members.
Yeah.
People that are away on missions. You have all these deductions you're going to be making. I know in our ward, the last statistic I heard, we have 560 people or something in the ward, and sacrament attendance is 110 to 120. So, I know that varies depending on your location, but the activity rate is quite low, even in the United States.
Okay, let's break this down. Let's say that in the United States, let's just do this on the fly here. There's 55,000 people per temple. Now, what do you think the activity rate is? Can you give me your best overall activity rates? So we'll start first with Culch and then with Doug. What do you think an overall activity rate is?
All right, if I'm being generous, I'm gonna say 30%.
What do you think, Doug?
I will go less, 28%.
Okay, well, we'll go times by 0.29. Okay, that'll give us an activity. That'll give us a total of about 16,000 members. Now, out of those 16, these are all active. What percentage of those are adults? We'll start first with Culch.
Oh, geez, what percent are adults? 40%.
What do you think, Doug?
No, adults I think would be more like maybe 2/3.
Okay, so we'll go with 50%. 50%. So now we have. Oh man, how do I go back? Well, shoot.
It was 15,500.
Okay, 15,500 times by 0.5. And now we're down to, this is how many adults are in that temple district. Okay, now here's all the adults. Now, what percentage of active adults have a temple recommend, do you think, Culch?
I'll be a little bit generous, and I'll say 65%.
What do you think, Doug?
No, it's more like 25%.
Okay, well, we'll go with times. I think it is also, I think it's probably around 50%. So the between all of us, we'll go times by point. Oh my gosh, I am the worst. So we were, what were you at? 8,7750 times by, this is how you shouldn't do this on the fly here. 7750 times by, what do we say? 40%. Now we're down to that. That's how many of those have a temple recommend. Now, how many of the people who have a temple recommend actually utilize the temple recommend on at least, we'll say, a once a quarter basis? What do you think? I mean, because we have some people who are invalid. We have some people who just get a temple recommend and never ever use it. What do you think here, Culch?
25% go on a quarterly
Only 25% of the people use the temple recommends on a quarterly basis. That seems kind of low to me, but that's just an opinion. What do you think, Doug?
I kind of agree with Culch.
Okay.
That means they'd have to go 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Okay. You both.
I'm just going off my own experience as a
I will
temple
weigh in
recommend
there.
holder.
We'll go by a 0.3 because I do think it's a little bit higher. But basically, when it boils down to it, we're talking about only about 900 people here. I mean, it starts big, but when you whittle down the numbers, we're talking about an average temple only has 900 people who are actually going to be utilizing it on a regular basis. That's the entire problem here.
Yeah.
Okay.
About how the church helped during Hurricane Beryl, or didn't help might be a better way to phrase that. From the Deseret News, the church's Just Serve website posted a Hurricane Beryl crisis cleanup page to match volunteers with cleanup projects after the storm swept through the Caribbean and Texas last week. That's what the Deseret News said. So I went to Just Serve to see what their page looked like. And it says this: crisis cleanup needs several volunteers to handle phone calls to and from property owners that are seeking help in cleaning up their damaged property, including mucking out flooded homes and clearing property of tree limbs and debris. Phone volunteers will help identify the needs of the callers so the crews from various organizations can be sent out to provide assistance in an orderly and efficient manner. Volunteers can determine how much time they want to spend making or receiving calls, and they can work from home or any other location. I wanted to know what crisis cleanup was because that's all the church is offering, is for their members to go volunteer for a different organization. So I went to the crisis cleanup website, and under the resources listed for Hurricane Beryl, there was absolutely nothing. At the top of the page was listed a hotline, which I called and listened to a recording that said volunteers could be sent out to help move debris to the curb, but it may take a long time to get a set of volunteers to your place. So that is what the church offered in terms of actual hands on the ground, members fielding phone calls to hopefully get other people to help. The Deseret News also said the American Red Cross issued a news release that noted its emergency response to Hurricane Beryl was made possible by those who give to its annual disaster giving program. The ADGP makes it possible for the American Red Cross to prepare before disaster strikes, and apparently the church also donated to that. Next up, BYU Idaho's spring.
Okay, so let's get your takes here. What did we learn? What do you get to take away here from what the church is doing on Hurricane Beryl? What do you think?
Not a whole lot. Fielding calls, maybe.
Yeah.
Not
Doesn't sound
that
like
much.
it. Unless there's things going on, in the ward. Now,
Maybe
I know,
at the local level stuff that people aren't hearing about.
D-Vice, I know when we've had some horrible tornadoes, Tennessee or close by, the organization is always our bishop getting up and saying, okay, we're going to take a group of people down to Alabama to clean up tornado damage. How many people can go? They took youth, they took adults, and, we had a big army from our state go down and clean up some Alabama damage. So I think a lot of it happens on that level. I'm not sure how much is happening on the, through these other agencies. But
Yeah,
I know,
I
know that we have, our ward here has done a lot. So
that is good news to hear. If I just scroll through and do a Google search for Hurricane Beryl and Mormon Church, the first hit is generally unquotable. That's what we would expect. Then we have a Lighthouse Church, which is helping out. And then we have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Rex Havoc here. We have a couple of other things, but it doesn't seem like the church usually runs a lot of big PR spreads whenever it helps out with things. We're not seeing a lot of that, if you know what I mean.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. One more.
Spring commencement on July 25th will host J. Annette Dennis,
Yay!
first counselor in the Relief Society General Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to address the graduates. There are 2,975 students scheduled to graduate this commencement, 2,221 with bachelor degrees and 865 with associate degrees. Of these graduates, 1,689 are women and 1,286 are men.
So she's best known for that controversial statement that she made at the General Relief Society commencement, where she said that no organization that I'm aware of gives more power and authority to women than the LDS Church. And now she's going to give the commencement address. Boy, it just seems like whenever the church has a firestorm or a PR, whenever anybody steps on it, they give them a commencement address and say, hey, just give a commencement address and this will all blow over.
Mm-hmm. They basically made it like the island of misfit toys. Like you mess up, we're going to send you there to give your commencement speech. The most friendly place possible where you're not going to face any blowback. You could say anything and they're going to stand up and they're going to cheer for you.
Yep, that's exactly right. The softest of the soft landing spots. I do wonder if she's going to double down on her rhetoric, because when she responded to that criticism, she didn't exactly apologize for it. She seemed to stand by what she had said earlier about how the church is such an empowering place for women. And that definitely struck a chord with certain individuals. Any thoughts real quick here before we watch the rest of the clip, Doug, on J. Annette Dennis, first counselor of the General Relief Society presidency, giving the commencement at BYU, Idaho?
Yeah, I agree with Coach, and I think that her definition of power and authority is in direct contradiction to what my definition would be.
And what any reasonable person's definition of power and authority would be. She wants to redefine it and say that Mormon women are incredibly powerful because they have access to the power of the priesthood. Okay, because your husband is powerful, therefore you're powerful. And for a reasonable person, that doesn't make any sense. You have to intrinsically have decision-making ability and power yourself if you're going to say that you're powerful. It doesn't help that your neighbor's powerful, if you know what I mean.
You know what's interesting? Oh, can I jump in real quick? You know what's interesting about that Sister Dennis controversy is you'd expect the people who were out of the church, maybe the inactives, the PMOs, those types of people you'd expect to be upset with what she said. But a lot of just regular members, sisters who attend church, who are active, they were upset with what she said. So it was interesting. She was getting it across the board.
Well, she was getting it from the people outside of the church who said, the church is incredibly harmful and that the church is very cult-like, and also that the church is known for being incredibly patriarchal. So those people piled on. But then you had members inside that says, what's the old thing? Don't pee on my leg and tell me that it's raining. You know what I mean? Just own it and say, that we don't have power, but we hope that we'll have it someday. Instead, she tried to make some kind of a weird analogy of saying that because her husband is powerful, that she is too. It didn't really work for most people.
Yeah, you hold the priesthood through your husband.
Yeah, that you have access to power, that Mormon women are so powerful because they have access to priesthood authority. That's a kind of logic falls flat on most people. We'll just put it that way.
Standing next to a light bulb doesn't make you electric.
Bingo. I think we got all the analogies nailed here.
Campus-based students and 1,284 are online students, with 1,375 of those graduating having started their college experience as BYU Pathway Worldwide students. The commencement is scheduled for 12:45 p.m. on July 25th at the BYU Idaho Center and will be streamed live. J. Annette Dennis has been in the news a lot recently for comments that she made about how Mormon women have the priesthood. Let's see on July 25th if she makes similar comments to the graduates from BYU Idaho.
Good
I can't
question.
wait to listen. And last up today from Cody, Wyoming, the city of Cody is more than 4 months late in fulfilling a request for public records submitted by Preserve Our Cody Neighbors on February 29th. Citing that delay, POCN filed a complaint in Park County District Court on June 29th, asking the judge to order the city to produce the requested communications dealing with the proposed LDS temple. In addition, attorney Anthony Wendland of Sheridan asked the judge to assess penalties, costs, and damages. The city has been diligently working on gathering the records for the POCN's request, City Administrator Barry Cook said in an email Sunday. Given the volume of emails and documents they requested, it has taken a great deal of time to review the records to determine what can and cannot be released under the Wyoming Public Records Act. The city continues to work on the records request and will release the records to the POCN as soon as possible. POCN has extended, at the city's request, the deadline for the city's fulfillment of its records request to August 5th. The group opposes locating a temple on Skyline Drive as proposed by the LDS Church. Both parties have filed lawsuits about the issue, with the outcome awaiting a decision by District Judge John Perry, who took the matter under advisement after final arguments May 23rd. While the records might not have an immediate effect, we felt there was additional information we could learn, POCN member Terry Skinner said Sunday. He noted that the records released to the group last year ended July 18th, and the new request begins from then. A lot of things have happened after that, he added. We believe the city is waiting and hoping the judge rules before they have time to provide the records. Citing the late broadcaster Paul Harvey's tagline, POCN member Carla Akelhoff said, the new records could provide the complete tale, and now you know the rest of the story. After beginning the application process in May of 2023, LDS received a city building permit in the fall. The church had moved wrapped stacks of modular building components into Cody that spring and relocated them onto land adjacent to the site this spring, but no construction has started. The proposed temple would measure about 10,000 square feet with a nearly 101-foot tower on 4.7 acres zoned rural residential. POCN made its first request for public records May 24, 2023, and received about 100 emails, texts, and phone transcripts only in late July, Skinner said. When the group continued to press for more, the city provided about 4,000 records September 15th. POCN believes the city put off filing the request so the group couldn't use the records in its lawsuit, he said. The city delayed filing the 2023 public records request for an unreasonable amount of time, a pattern that the city has knowingly engaged in with respect to POCN, Wentland wrote. The city also hasn't offered a reason for the current delay, an open, ongoing violation of the Wyoming Public Records Act. POCN is seeking public records from July 19th, 2023 to February 29th, 2024 for temple-related communications between the LDS and former city planner Todd Stoll, city planning and zoning board member Matt Moss, and city officials, and also among P&C board members. The new time period includes the LDS withdrawal of its application for a special exemption regarding the tower's height, Skinner said. Then P&Z accepted the findings for a conditional use permit and on August 8th approved the final site plan. POCN is challenging those P&Z approvals. From August 8th and beyond, there had to be a lot of information back and forth, he said, including Stoll's resignation, February 24th, 2024. That's because Stoll is a member of the Mormon Church. We just want to understand what that is. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.
Okay, let's just get a reaction there first, Doug. It's amazing the church sent all the materials for this Cody temple, and they're just sitting there on the plot. They can't assemble them together because they're still waiting for this to go through, and they're just sitting with their hands, sitting there, on their hands right now.
Yeah, this couldn't be any more of a public relations disaster. I mean, seriously, the church has shot itself in both feet. This is not going to end well. No matter what happens, it's not going to end well. So,
yeah, what do you think there, Culch?
I agree with that. I mean, they may get their way, and in some of the places they're going to be able to build the temple as high as they want and wherever they want, but they're not going to be able to fix those relationships with the people who live in those communities. There's going to be hard feelings towards the church. And the church in the past has always been very sensitive about its image and the way people think about it and have tried to be good neighbors. I think they genuinely have in the past. But for whatever reason, it seems with all these temples and the issues they're having, they don't care what the neighbors think. They want what they want, and they're gonna try to get it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people that they offend during the process. This is kind of in contrast to, if you think back to like the LDS Church in the 1970s and 80s, they ran the Homefront campaign commercials. Those were those really feel good commercials, and at the end it would say, "And this is brought to you by the Mormons," and it was all about image and all about making people feel good about the church, and it was dispelling notions. And the same thing kind of carried through with President Monson with the I'm a Mormon campaign about humanizing the church and trying to build bridges. And President Nelson is absolutely not a bridge builder. You know what I mean, Doug?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, this story has gone international. I saw something from, I think, Daily Mail, where they ran a story about this. But I have a theory about this. I think that the church here has decided we're just going to play the long game. We want to put our temples wherever it is that we want to put them. And I think they feel like they can go in, they'll use the Arlupa law to bully their way into getting what they want.
Yep.
And if they offend everybody and make the locals mad, it won't matter because the church is going to be there from then on. They're going to have their temple. And 50 years from now, I think they're banking on nobody remembering it. And I think they're just playing the long game. You know,
you could be right about that. Let me just play before I let you both go here. We're going to wrap things up here. I really appreciate everybody on the live stream. That's really great here. I'm just going to give you a sneak peek of this one video that I worked hard on. I'm only going to play 2 sections of it. It's the top 10 failings of President Nelson. I'm just going to play the introduction and my favorite section only. This will be a little teaser for when I do release this later on. If everybody out there can hit the like and the subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. But let me just play 2 sections of this. Take about 3 minutes, and then we'll be out of here. On loan from Kolob. Today we're examining the top 10 failings of President Russell M. Nelson, the current leader of the Mormon Church. President Nelson has been a prominent figure in the church for many years, but his leadership has not been without controversy. Let's dive into some of the most significant issues that have arisen during his tenure. Okay, now we're not going to fail. You fail. Okay, my favorite one. I've got some tongue-in-cheek ones here. This is kind of a light video, lots of cartoons. This is for the kids. I'm trying to capture your audience culture. I'm failing. I'm trying, and I'm failing.
My audience isn't that young, man. You should see my analytics.
Culture's fees are reasonable, D-Base, you know.
Yeah, very nice. Okay.
My
my favorite one here is that I put together is number 6, and I'm really proud of the editing that I did because I found this young lady in the church here, and I'm poking a little bit fun at her expense, but I think I've done it in a kind-hearted way. And she talks about President Nelson's famous flight of death, and I really like what I did with the editing here. You guys can tell me if I'm way out of line or if I need to repent. So here, let's get number 6 failing, and this will be it for us.
Illegal.
You fail.
Another significant failing is Nelson's fabricated Zimbabwean bandit story. He claimed to have been robbed at gunpoint in Zimbabwe in 2009, but investigations have cast doubt on the authenticity of his story. His tall tale became more embellished after each retelling. Such fabrications undermine trust in his leadership and raise serious ethical questions.
President Nelson is the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the church that I belong to. I had this book I had picked up at the library, and I'd set it there to start studying. Okay, so he's in this mission home there with these different leaders of the church there, like area president, mission president, and their wives. They're in the mission home, and 3 men armed with automatic weapons burst into the room. One robber put a gun to my head, announcing that they were there to kill me and abduct my wife, and then pulled the trigger. Like this happened. But he pulls the trigger, and the gun just makes a clicking sound. It doesn't fire. It misfires. I can feel the Holy Ghost confirm in my heart. It's kind of this warm feeling. Anyway, the robber gets upset, and he says he kicked me in the face and knocked me to the floor. I mean, 85-year-old man? I could feel the Holy Ghost confirm in my heart. I was certain that this was the end for me. I remember thinking, I'm about to pass out of this life and go on to the next. This is going to be a very interesting experience. 85-year-old man? I could feel the Holy Ghost confirm in my heart.
She's crazy. She's totally crazy.
Okay, you guys tell me if I'm way out of line on this one, but I did have a little bit of fun with that story.
I thought it was fun. I liked it. I liked the editing. She seems nice. Honestly, I'd hang out with her.
She's a really nice person. I've got no problems. I just found that the entire story, I like how during the story, she all of a sudden kind of thinks about it there for a second. She's like, wait a minute. An 85-year-old man gets kicked in the head and held at gunpoint. And she's kind of thinking about it for a second. But then she goes back and says, oh, I feel the warm spirit when I read this story. And it turns out that this story grew in legend. Every time it was told, it got better and better. This is like worse than the Gospels. You know, the Gospel of Mark, there's literally no miracles. And the long ending is the only miracle. And it was added later. Then Luke and Matthew, there's a few more miracles. And then by the time John, Jesus is fully divine, we're seeing an evolution of President Nelson's legendary story here. And she's kind of just wrestling with it and thinking, boy, this is really some story. What do you think, Mark? Was that a cheap shot, or what do you think? I'm sorry, Doug. What do you think, Doug?
No, I mean, I thought it was kind of cute. I think if I remember the story right, wasn't it a knife? I thought it was a knife.
It started off like a knife, and then pretty soon it was a gun, and then it was a gun to the head, and then it just got bigger and bigger. It's just like a tall tale, like these fish stories, like these general
laser
stories.
Beam in the latest iteration.
Yeah, and then
aliens came down in their ship, and
I think the mission president and his wife were interviewed, and they're like, it was kind of like, yeah, these guys came in, you know, tried to rob us. The mission president's wife ran outside and called for help, and they left. Something like that. So it's like a completely different story.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you got to, aggrandize yourself. Now, I just want to say one thing. Look, I almost never, with the Mormon News Roundup, I almost never criticize an individual member of the church because I'm really interested in church leadership and in church policies. But I will make an exception with somebody who puts out a public video. If you're engaging in the public sphere, then your ideas are ripe for criticism. If you're just some second counselor in the Twila Elders Quorum president, then I would absolutely not want to talk about that person because their ideas are not ripe for any criticism. But she put herself out there, and therefore she wants to engage in the public sphere. I'm always amazed. Colt, you're on X a lot more than I am. When somebody posts on X, and then I give them a response, and maybe it's not drinking the Kool-Aid, and they go, "Oh, well, that's not what I was looking for." How dare you criticize me? And I was like, "Aren't you the one who's on X? You're on a public forum? If you want engagement, post on a public forum. If you don't, create a private Facebook group for you and your families, and then you don't need to worry about anybody else." You know what I'm saying?
I think some people don't realize on certain platforms, everyone sees what you post. It's not like Facebook where only your friend group's going to see it.
Okay. Any last thoughts here, Doug, on what we went over? It was pretty crazy here. This is yet another episode of Real Talk Mormonism. I'm very much hoping that I will get more believing members of the church in the future who do want to come on and do want to, the real questions I want to ask a lot of true believing members is, why should everybody join the church? Why do you believe? What's the evidence? Those are the type of conversations I hope to have in the future. But what do you think of Real Talk Mormonism 5? Any last thoughts on today's episode here, Mark? Doug, I keep calling you Mark. I'm sorry, Doug, before I let you go.
I'm going to be calling up Thoughtless Taint and tell him to come on and debate you. That's what.
Dude, you should get Jacob. Jacob would come on. I think he would.
He would.
I really do.
I think he would. I'd like to see it.
my door is always open. It's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I've got some stuff that's lined up down the road here that I don't want to let too much of my cat out of the bag here. But I'll just give you, since it's just us three, it is a little bit in the future here, but I have an episode here that I'm going to be releasing soon. And that's just a little sneak peek for you about whether temples is building Mormon temples the single best way to alleviate poverty. What do you think about that, Culch? What do you think?
He made that claim. Diva's got him on his show, and on that show, Jacob made that claim that like the single greatest program for alleviating poverty in the world is the LDS temple program. And he wants to debate about it. He challenged me to debate him on that. And I told him to kick rocks.
Unfreaking believable. I mean, seriously. Seriously.
You don't believe that claim? You're doubting that claim, Doug? Is that what I'm hearing?
Completely.
He's a doubting Doug.
Doubting Doug. DD right here.
Doug, you need to doubt your doubts. Haven't you ever heard that before? Before you doubt your faith?
Yeah, I tried that once. Didn't work out.
Okay. All right. I will give another sneak peek. I'm in the sneak peek mood. What can I tell you? And I do have this going to be released here soon, but I am going to give a slight sneak peek here before the cat gets out of the bag. And you guys can tell me. I'm only going to play a minute or two of this. Jacob Hansen is the creator and host of the Thoughtful Faith YouTube channel and podcast. His content focuses on exploring faith, particularly within the context of the Latter-day Saint LDS tradition. Hansen is known for engaging in formal debates on religious topics, which he believes help clarify beliefs through contrast and discussion with those who hold differing views. Hey, real quick, who's that guy right there called? Who's he talking to?
Jacob Isbell. He took Jacob Hansen for a ride.
He
the
sure
MMA
did.
fight.
Yeah, first they had a debate, and then Jacob Isbell handed him his lunch. Brother Hansen also regularly espouses anti-gay, anti-trans, and homophobic rhetoric in the name of his favorite God. I hosted Jacob on the Mormon News Roundup in July of 2023 in episode 68. Oh, and just so you know, I'm D-Vays, the host of the Mormon News Roundup, the handsome guy on the left. Like and subscribe. And don't forget to think celestial while you're at it. Yeah. Now, while Jacob and I were discussing the Mormon Church's unprecedented global temple building spree, Jacob made an incredible claim during that program. Let me play it for you.
Every dollar that the church uses is for humanitarian aid. The building of temples is a form of humanitarian aid if you really believe that temples and temple covenants do good for humanity. In fact, I would argue that the greatest poverty program in the world is the LDS temple program, because when people make and keep covenants in temples, when our missionaries go and teach people to live the laws of the gospel, we actually fight poverty, but we fight it at its roots. So any funds given to the church to further the work of Zion is a charitable humanitarian contribution.
Come on, bro. Seriously.
This was the single most disliked short I have ever produced. In response to Cult's reposting of that clip, Jacob challenged me to a debate. I haven't done a debate since my 9th grade speech class at Hillcrest Junior High School in Murray, Utah, which I lost, by the way.
You lose.
I have never made a response to Jacob because, quite frankly, I'm not a debater. Okay. Okay, that's I can't let all of my I'm gonna release that episode.
Yeah, you gotta
soon
stop
here.
it.
I'm gonna release that episode soon here, but real quick, Doug, the LDS Temple Building Program is the greatest poverty program in the world. Can you believe that?
Yeah, man, that's great news. That is just like the most disjointed thinking I've ever seen in my life. You know.
What do you think,
Seriously.
What do you think, Coach, the greatest poverty program in the world?
You know, I give Jacob a lot of crap. I really do. But he seems like a fairly intelligent person. You know, he's educated. But when something like that comes out of his mouth, it just makes you shake your head. And the only reason he is saying something like that with a straight face is because he's drinking the LDS Kool-Aid. That's the only reason you say that.
I mean, it sounds like something a politician would have said.
Yeah, for sure, Doug. Absolutely.
It does remind me of that little short that you put together of the Cebu. How do you say that? Cebu, Philippines temple?
They say Cebu, but yeah,
okay.
Cebu is how people who look like us would say it.
Okay, I gotcha. Beautiful multi-million-dollar building built on 11.5 acres. That is gorgeous. That's a handsome building. What do you think there, Doug? What do you think?
Yeah. This is gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, let's check out that. Well, that's at least what we get from the front.
I love to see the temple. I'll go inside someday. I'll covenant with my Father. I'll promise to obey. For the temple is a holy place where we are sealed together.
Oh my gosh.
Look at those power lines, Doug.
Oh my gosh.
That brings back memories, man. That was my life for 2 years, walking around places like that.
Yeah, there's a big difference between what you see up front and what you get in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did you like? I snuck in Rusty there with the Think Celestial there with the poverty scene. Did you see him looking in on there? You know.
Yeah,
I do like that. I do.
Thinking
like
Celestial's
that.
placing a big gaudy building right in the middle of a very poor neighborhood.
Yeah, there's a lot of other pictures that are somewhat like that. Anyway, that I've let too much out. I wasn't meaning to do that, but that is going to be released here very, very soon. And I'm also getting the view here that I've got to end this live stream for other various reasons here. But I appreciate you guys come on. Tune into the Mormon News Roundup every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mormon movie reviews every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Culch, what projects are you working on in the future? You just released that video today. What else you got going on?
Yeah, I've got a long form video that I've been working on. It's taken forever. It's I'm calling it Garment Palooza, where it's going to be similar to my Brad Wilcox video, but it's going to be all about LDS garments. So that's coming. And then I've got another one I'm planning on doing that is about this ex-Jehovah's Witness that was being very critical of ex-Mormons and basically doing a trauma Olympics with us about who's the most traumatic. And that led to a pretty cool exchange on Twitter that I figured I could turn into a video. So yeah, that'll be coming. And then check out my Bednar video I just released if you haven't seen it yet.
Very nice. Doug, thanks so much for dropping by. Thanks so much, Culch. We'll see you all
No
soon,
problem.
okay? Okay.
All right.